Hey guys, thank you for catching another episode of the hashtag Speak Easy podcast brought to you by Comfort Fresh. Comfort Fresh is the leading supplier of quality socks and other garments at affordable prices, bringing comfort to those who need it most. For me, growing up, I always saw that my mother struggled to find socks that were both comfortable and moisture wicking or kept her feet dry. She had type 1 diabetes, and so protecting her feet was very important as she was getting older. Well, that's where Comfort Fresh comes into place. With over 20 years of experience, they bring you quality bamboo moisture wicking socks that are great for your feet. They have different styles. You can check them out by going to www.comfort-fresh.com. That's www.comfort-fresh.com. So I'm super excited to bring you guys this episode because I actually tried to do this episode about 3 times, you guys. Like it's weird. I recorded it. No, I tried to do it the first time live and I kept getting cut off. I recorded it and then got cut off and then went back and was like, well, the part that I have recorded, let me upload that. And it didn't work. So here we are. With this is take number 4 or 5, somewhere around there. But it is the breaking communication and what that does for entrepreneurs, for relationships, for marriages and finances, for children, like so many different areas that we can hit on when it comes to a breakdown in communication. But I felt like we're at a point where the world likes everything in sound bites, right? They like everything to be quick, that they can digest like on the move because nobody really sits still like we used to sit still. We think about old times, way before my time, you guys, where families would come together and sit in front of a radio to listen to a show. And they would literally sit in front of that radio every week to get the next part of that show. And fast forward to now, we have Netflix and we don't even like commercials. So, I mean, let's just be real. Things have definitely turned to the left and to the right when it comes to how we communicate and what communication looks like and what favorable communication looks like. We still know that, of course, what you do and your stance, that nonverbal communication is still very valuable in business and in life. But where does the breakdown in communication really come from? And I know that even though our education system has had its ups and downs, one of the things that we're not really taught in school is how to be great communicators. We're taught how to be talkers. We're taught the words, we're taught the definitions of some of those words. And can I just be honest, as a 40-plus-year-old woman, I am just now learning the definition of some of these words. And I know for darn sure we did not talk about these in school. And but it comes with maturity. But it's also because I am someone who I seek out definitions, I seek out reading and learning in order for me to be a more effective communicator. But that's not something that we're taught. And when we are taught, or what we are taught when it comes to communication, is often taught from what we see our parents do, what we see on movies, what we see our friends do. And so there's really nobody that sits down and says, this is the proper way to communicate. And I'll give an example. When years ago, my son was younger and there was a fire next door. We were in Philadelphia at the time. I literally smelled smoke. For some odd reason, I went to the back window, and at the back window of the home, somebody was pointing that our next door neighbor's home was on fire. So we had to get out of the home, myself, my children at the time. I was living with a friend and her children as well. We were renting out the place together. So we all had to make it outside. And it was interesting because that wasn't the piece that really like sparked this discussion. I remember my son looking and seeing the police come up, and he turned to me. Now, mind you, he's a child at this time. He turned to me and said, "Mommy, you're not supposed to look the police in their face, right?" First of all, that broke my heart because I had to go into this whole explanation of, the police are there to help, but at some point there was something where he picked up communication wise that when you were speaking to someone in authority that you weren't supposed to give them eye contact. And can we be honest? There are adults right now that don't give eye contact. There are children right now that have that fear of giving you eye contact because it's supposed to be this really like intense thing. But eye contact is actually a form of communication. Now, I never got to the bottom of where he got that particular thought process from, if it was from possibly from a movie, because there are many movies where, a cop will say, "Are you looking at me? Don't look at me," or something along that line, right? Which leads to a whole other discussion because we always talk about, how we see police and how we see certain industries, or certain job descriptions and how we have defined them in our own mind. But it's been from, again, what we've seen, what we have personally experienced, what we have been taught, or what we have witnessed secondhand. And so it kind of gets murky. And when we get back to the breaking communication, I feel like that's one of those things is I feel uncomfortable looking at you, not me personally, but if I feel uncomfortable looking at you directly in your eyes or directly in your face, then I've already broken part of the communication. As a speaker, we're taught to make eye contact with the audience. Of course, we know that speaking is like the number one fear. It beat out the fear of death. So we can see why, again, this is something that can hinder people. Because if we're looking for a contract, if we're looking for uh, a new experience, if we're looking to collaborate with someone, there needs to be some eye contact. Now, a lot of stuff is done online, but we still meet face to face with people every day. And so, is that one of the breaks in your communication? Are you giving eye contact? Another break in communication, now, this is the one that really takes me out, is the definition of the word that you're saying the same definition that they have? And it's a running joke in the African American community and probably in some of the other communities too, because we all have our little things that we say. But for us, there are some things that we can say, and it can mean something to us, but mean something completely different to the other person. And so it's like you have to have that understanding. Is that where the breaking communication is coming? And this could be a breaking communication in business, a breaking communication in relationships. Is that where the breaking communication is coming from? Because what I'm saying, you're interpreting it as something different. And so one of the things that you can do if you feel as though that is the break in communication that you're having, is saying, what did you hear me say? Very different than what did you say and what did I say? Because y'all know it. I know some of y'all got triggered because y'all immediately heard your mother say, "What did I say?" Da, 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 da. No, no, no. What did you hear me say? And oftentimes you'll get a very different response than just what did I say, right? Adding here clarifies something different in, in that conversation, in that question, because it's not just the words, but what did you actually hear? Like, what did that, what was the true explanation? What was the true definition that you heard? What was the true, like, what did you feel when I said these words? And that's the third thing, is am I clearly communicating what it is that I'm trying to say? Are they clearly hearing it? And am I getting the feedback from them? That's the third piece, is am I getting the feedback from them to make sure that they're hearing what it is that I am trying to communicate? That's the third break in communication, because we have to understand that when people are in a state of emotion, when we are in an emotional moment, then we tend to hear things differently. And so asking for that clarification, asking for them to repeat back what it is you said, again, but repeat it back as what they actually heard, then we can go ahead and we can actually have a discussion. This is also how we can kind of separate ourselves from the narcissist and the pretender, the person that's just the yes person that just wants to get the conversation over and done with. Because the person that says, oh yeah, no, you said that. That's not what I asked you. I said, what did you hear me? What did you hear when I said it? Like, what did you hear me say? And here's the thing, there are probably men right now listening to this going, wait. This sounds real interesting, because it sounds like a conversation I had with my wife during ... discussion, argument, disagreement, whatever, right? Because again, we hear things, our emotions affected, listen, our level of education and understanding affected, and we could hear two different things, and people can all be in the same exact place and hear the same exact words and still hear something completely different based upon their own actions, inaction, abilities, based upon their own experiences and where they are in that moment. So we talked about how everybody wants to hear things in sound bites. And then when you ask that question, what did you hear me say? Sometimes they will say something back to you that was just a sound bite of what you said, which means that at some point they completely shut down. Now, why is this so this is so valuable when it comes to business, is because I've been working with people that are overseas. It's listen, we got to break down in communication on so many different levels, because they're not always English is not always their first language, and we have to be very clear again in how we communicate. And so I had to go back and say, okay, let me step back and see if what I'm saying is clearly being understood. And y'all, there's times where it's not. And this is coming from an introvert that I have to say, I suck at communicating. Throughout my life, I suck at communicating, because I would be the one, I did not want to make people upset. I felt that if I communicated how I truly felt, communicated what I really wanted to say, that would hurt people, that would make people mad at me. And I would resort to not saying anything at all, which sometimes your silence is the break in the communication. Y'all better catch that. Sometimes your silence is the break in communication. Sometimes we need silence to digest some things. Sometimes we use silence as a tool in order for us to hurry the conversation along. We use it as a tool to protect ourselves from the potential devastation of where this conversation is going. And so, in order for us to be able to say we want to make some things change, we want to go ahead and put ourselves in a position of success, we have to understand that we need to be better communicators. And so, what does that include? Again, asking the question, what did you hear me say? Getting that feedback, not diving and just throwing everything. We always talk about, word vomit and how you literally just go blah, 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 and you expect people to receive it, comprehend it, and be able to execute on it. And they just barely heard all of it. So, do I need to put some pauses in there? Do I need to ask some questions while I'm communicating with people? What are the sound bites when it comes to what I'm saying? Because those are going to be what people gravitate towards, what people go ahead and pull out are the sound bites. Think about it. I'm a podcaster. I've been podcasting for 6 years, and there will be sound bites that people will gravitate towards and say, "Oh, I love when you said that in this episode." They might not be able to tell you nothing from the rest of the episode, but they can tell you that sound bite, and that sound bite they took it and ran with it. That's the other thing. Remember that those sound bites, they're gonna take that and run with it. They're gonna take that to the bank. Don't believe me? Look at Twitter. Don't believe me? Look at Instagram. People will take a sound bite, they will take a snippet of something, and baby, they're gonna run with it. They're gonna run with it like they a track star. She's a runner, she's a track star. They're gonna run with it, okay? Uh, and it may not have been the sound bite that you wanted them to run with. Oopsie, it's out there now. So we have to think about those things before we have these discussions. And no matter what the discussion may be, again, this could be for life, this could be for business. Asking, what did you hear me say? Putting some pauses in there so that way we can give them time to take in what it is that we said. If they have a question, they have a time where they can go ahead and ask the question. That's one of the things that and I can say this over the years, I've started working when I was like 13. Well, no, actually, I started working before that, but legally, I started working at like 13. And y'all, talk about a breakdown in communication. Man, I learned so much from the different jobs that I've had from the age of 13 until now. But I can tell you one thing for certain two things for sure. I hated meetings. Meetings were like awful because most times when people have a meeting, all they do is word vomit or they do some of the worst things. So they'll have a PowerPoint presentation and they're reading every single thing from the PowerPoint presentation. No actual engagement with the people that are there. And so it's boring. And we fall asleep and we're ready to go. And we didn't actually get anything from it because after the first 30 minutes, we went to sleep and our eyes are still open. The other thing is they'll do a PowerPoint and give you the PowerPoint to write notes, but like you can't really engage with people. So you're just sitting there writing down a whole bunch of notes. And it's it's a weird space to be in because again, that's what we think works. Now there have been some businesses that have changed up what meetings look like over the years, but they're still like that's like the core of what the meetings look like. Trainings, meetings, and so they were horrible, horrible, y'all. Because again, and then we would ask for feedback at the end of the actual. We would ask for like anonymous feedback, right? The paper that everybody had to fill out at the end of a training. And you don't want to be mean, Some people would give an honest opinion. Most people would just be like, oh yeah, it was good. And that's why it never changed. Again, communication. But getting actual feedback from people in the training while it's going on, that works a whole lot better. Not just asking, is everybody getting this? That everybody's going to say, yeah, so we can get past it. But actually asking, okay, what part was the hardest for you to understand in what I just shared? Getting real feedback, actually asking questions, and making sure that the questions that you're asking are putting you in a position where you can excel. Y'all, I don't want to dive too much. Like, I don't want to keep y'all wrangled up in this particular episode, but I just had to put that out there because I feel like we're in a time where communication has to change. It has changed. How we communicate, the blocks of time, even look at the videos. It used to be live stream. Yeah, do it for hours. People would show up, and now it's 15-second videos. And they want you to have it all in there, communicate, and then go on with your life. And so everybody wants the sound bite. Everybody wants the snippet. They want the snack. They're not necessarily looking for the meal. So as the entrepreneur, how do we get in front of the people that are looking for the meal, for one, which podcast interviews are always going to be a powerful way to market and to get in front of people that are looking for a little bit more than just a snack. Because podcast listeners actually go and listen to the full-on show most days. They take action after listening to episodes. Like, that is one of the most valuable things about podcasts. Shout out to Podbean. That's the podcast platform that I'm currently using. And I love the metrics that they give us because, again, I can go ahead and, kind of break down where everything's coming from and how it's all being put together. But the other thing is, I was on another platform who had shut down my show. No explanation, no nothing. And I literally had to transfer like 300 and some odd episodes over to the Podbean platform. And when I did so, like, I was asking questions, I was doing this and doing that. Here's, again, communication. I reached out to another podcaster who suggested Podbean and had suggested Podbean like years ago. And when I told them what happened, they said immediately, they were like, transfer everything over to the new platform. It was because I communicated with them exactly what happened, how I felt about it, and that I didn't want it to happen again. Like, I need communication. I need, now mind you, the platform I came from, I spent 3 days messaging them the same exact sentence because every time I messaged them, they would message me back and say something, and I would go, and I'll tell you the actual sentence because they said, well, we don't see that email attached to an account. And my response was, that's not the email that I used to open the account. When I first opened the account, it was through Facebook. Now, this is the previous platform. And they were like, okay, but we don't see your email attached to this account. For 3 days of that, y'all. Talk about a break in communication. 3 whole days. And I was just like, I'm over it. After 3 days, they finally said, oh, okay, we found out what happened. This is what happened. We're going to restore your account. By that time, I was like, I'm done. That's a complete and utter break in communication. How? But unfortunately, there's a lot of companies, especially when you're an entrepreneur, and there's so many companies that are coming up and popping up, and they've automated a lot of things. There's not that same customer service feel and experience that we used to get. Uh, and so when we talk about the break in communication, I'm talking about, the B2B, but also don't forget about the communication when it comes to B2C. When you're dealing with your customers and your clients, that communication should be there as well. And I know that I have fallen victim to my own lack of communication when it came to certain experiences with brands and things not coming out the way it was supposed to come out, and things taking longer, me having to do more, and not fully communicating with a brand, not fully communicating with someone else. And so I had to go back and say, okay, I've done the same thing. How do I get better? So that's, all of that is the meat, potatoes, the sides, the salad, everything when it comes to communication. Because if you can't communicate properly, then your business can't succeed. If people do not understand what it is you're trying to communicate through your marketing, through your book, they can't understand what you're trying to communicate, then what was the purpose? So I just had to share that real quick. I hope I didn't bore you guys with this episode. Let me know how this episode resonated with you by leaving me a review on your favorite podcasting platform. That part, especially if you over there on Podbean, I appreciate them. But with that being said, y'all, this is your host, Altovise Pelzer. And until next time, don't forget to press it out. See ya.